In New York on July 4th, 1988, beautiful little Sasha Samsudean was born into the world. Sasha spent her childhood years growing up in Orlando, Florida. She graduated from the University of Florida and went on to work as a social media manager for a local company. She spent time helping people find the right apartments for them, but it is unclear if she was paid for this work or if she was just volunteering. Either way, Sasha was extremely hardworking, but she also enjoyed life and liked to go out on the weekend. Sasha was overall described as a very happy and bubbly person. When Sasha was looking for apartments for herself in 2015, she knew she was going to be living alone, so she wanted to find somewhere where she felt safe. She chose the Uptown Place apartment complex in Orlando's downtown entertainment district. This apartment complex had 24/7 security cameras, and each apartment had its own quick-set lock. There was also a security guard on premises at nighttime that would actively monitor the complex. Sasha was really excited to have some independence living in her own apartment, and she was really comfortable with the level of security the apartment that she chose had. On Friday, October 16th, 2015, Sasha was watching a soccer game with her friends, and then they later all went out together. After the game, they went to a bar called Sidebar before eventually moving on to a different venue. In the early hours of Saturday, October 17th, 2015, Sasha was at the Attic nightclub in Orlando. She was 27 years old at the time. At around 12:30 a.m., Sasha separated from her friends, telling them that she was leaving the nightclub. One of her friends, Anthony, said this wasn't uncommon for their group. They would often separate and go to different venues and occasionally would meet back up. Anthony said that this particular time he did not meet back up with Sasha. However, he did have plans to go to breakfast with her that morning once the sun had risen. But the sun rose that morning and Sasha never showed up for breakfast. Her friend Anthony tried to text and call her to see where she was at, but Sasha didn't respond, which he thought was a bit strange, but there was also the possibility that maybe Sasha was just hungover. Later on that day, when Anthony still hadn't heard from Sasha, he started to worry. He contacted two of Sasha's friends who both hadn't heard from her either, and they started to become really concerned about this behavior. They all decided to go to Sasha's apartment to check on her and make sure everything was okay. When they got to the apartment complex, they noticed that Sasha's car was there. Sasha also had a baby shower that she was due to go to that day, and when her friends peered into the backseat of her car, they noticed that the present was still on the backseat, meaning that she didn't go. They proceeded to go up to Sasha's apartment, where they knocked on the door and called out to her, but she didn't reply, and there was no sign of life in the apartment. Sasha's friends were so worried about Sasha at this point that they started to call local hospitals to see if maybe she had ended up there for one reason or another, but there was no records of anyone matching her description at any of the hospitals they called. Once eliminating this possibility, Anthony was so concerned about Sasha that he decided to call the police and report Sasha missing. On the evening of October 17th, 2015, police arrived to Sasha's apartment to conduct a welfare check. Police gained access to Sasha's apartment, and when they walked in, they noticed that it smelt like cleaning products. The police did an initial sweep of the home and they couldn't find Sasha. Then an officer walked into Sasha's bedroom and her comforter was on her bed rolled up, and he noticed that there was dark hair coming out of the comforter as well as an arm. It was Sasha's lifeless body. The officers took a closer look at Sasha's body and it was clear that she had been violently murdered. Her neck had obvious strangulation marks, her shirt and bra had been ripped open, and her underwear and pants were no longer on her body. She also had a necklace tangled in her hair. Police couldn't find any signs of forced entry, but they did note that the toilet seat was up, which was strange as Sasha lived alone, and being a girl, it's just weird to have the toilet seat up. Police also found a condom wrapper in the apartment, as well as a shoe footprint next to her bed. It was also noted by investigators that Sasha's phone and keys were missing. As there were no signs of forced entry, investigators suspected that the killer was someone Sasha knew or someone she met that night or earlier hours of the morning. Police began investigating Sasha's murder straight away. There were security cameras on all the floors of the apartment building where Sasha lived, at the exits and in the hallways. Police retrieved this footage as well as CCTV footage from the street. The apartment complex was said to have 15 cameras, but all the footage was stored off-site and it was going to take a bit of time to retrieve and access it. Investigators found out that the apartment complex had a security guard, so they found out which security guard was working on the night of Sasha's murder and they interviewed him. He said that he did see Sasha in the early hours of Saturday morning. He told police that she was trying to get into the building, but she didn't have her phone or her key fob with her. She managed to slip into the apartment complex behind another resident and made her way up to her apartment, but she couldn't remember the code to get into her room. The security guard said that Sasha was noticeably intoxicated, so he tried to help her. He walked her out to her car to check if her belongings were in there, but as she was walking out to her car, she said she remembered the code, so she turned around and walked back in, but when they went up to the room to try it, it was incorrect. The security guard told Sasha that he had to keep working and was going to do another sweep of the building, and that he would be back soon to see if she was still there. When he returned to Sasha's room, she was gone, so he assumed that she got into her room. The security guard said he finished his shift that morning at 6 a.m. Police then started to look through all the security footage that they had collected. They looked at security footage from the Attic nightclub and they were able to identify Sasha pretty quickly. She was wearing white pants and a purpley blue shirt, which helped identify her. In the footage, it is noticeable that Sasha is intoxicated as she does stumble around and appears a little uneasy on her feet. In later footage though, Sasha is seen to be with 2 other women. Police released the footage of these 2 other women to the public and asked for them to come forward. It didn't take long at all for the 2 women to come forward, and from there, police asked them for their version of events from the night of Sasha's murder. The women said that they were waiting for an Uber when they saw Sasha alone, and they were really worried about her safety, so they approached her. They found out that Sasha didn't have her ID or her phone on her, so they offered to share the Uber with her so she could get home safely. Sasha agreed, so the 3 of them took the Uber to Sasha's apartment complex together. Once Sasha realized she was home, she headed into the apartment complex and the women didn't see her again. By this point, police also received the CCTV footage from inside the apartment complex. They looked through every single minute of footage from that morning. Sasha is seen on the security footage heading into her apartment complex just before 2 a.m. One of the male residents in the building walks in behind her and you can hear him on the footage asking Sasha if she is okay. You can then hear Sasha respond with, "Yes, thank you." Shortly after, you can see the security guard enter the apartment complex through the same door, and it appears that he is looking for Sasha. Just after 2 a.m, Sasha is seen on the CCTV footage running around a corner and quickly climbing a flight of stairs, and then shortly after it shows the security guard following closely behind her. Around 20 minutes later at 2:25 a.m, the footage shows Sasha and the security guard walking back down the stairs together, heading towards the car park just as the security guard had previously disclosed to police. Then shortly after, the footage shows them re-entering the building together and then heading back up the flight of stairs together. This was the last time police were able to locate Sasha on any CCTV footage. And then just after 6:30 a.m, the CCTV footage showed the security guard carrying white garbage bags out to the second floor car park. And if you remember from before, the security guard said his shift finished at 6 a.m. But maybe it took some time to finish up a few things before actually finishing. I'm a business manager in a school and I know that I have a finish time, but I don't always leave on time because sometimes you just get caught up doing things. So maybe that's what happened. A minute or 2 after the security guard took out the garbage bags, he is seen walking back into the building empty-handed. He then goes and gets his belongings and heads back out into the car park, leaving the apartment complex. Police were also able to determine the identity of the resident that Sasha followed into the apartment complex that morning. Police questioned him and he told police that he does remember seeing Sasha momentarily that morning and that he described her as pretty drunk. Police requested a DNA sample from the man, which he agreed to, and he was cleared of any involvement in the case. So the results of Sasha's autopsy report came in and her cause of death was found to be strangulation. This wasn't a surprise to police given the marks on her neck. There was also a fracture found in her neck. The medical examiner actually stated that he had never seen an internal neck fracture as severe as what Samsudean suffered. She also had bruising to her chest from several blows and her body smelled of cleaning solution. It was reported that she had received blunt force trauma to her head and it was clear that she had been restrained. Foreign male DNA was also found on Sasha's neck and chest area. Police turned to 2 of Sasha's ex-intimate partners for questioning. The first male that police interviewed was named Taylor and he was a bartender. Some reports state that they were never exclusive, but some state that they were dating for 2 years, so I'm not 100% sure of what their dynamic was. However, Taylor said that they were good friends and they still kept in contact. Taylor privately thought that maybe one day they might get back together, although they never really spoke about it. On the night of Sasha's murder, he was working at a bar and then went home after work in the early hours of the morning to go to sleep. Taylor let police take a DNA sample and he was ruled out of having any involvement in Sasha's murder. The second male police interviewed was Ben. Sasha had actually texted Ben at 5:12 a.m. on the morning of her murder, and this was the last text message that she ever sent. The message just said Ben. Ben responded about 16 minutes later at 5:28 a.m., but then Sasha never replied. Ben told police that he had dated Sasha briefly in college, but they were still good friends and they were actually supposed to hang out that weekend. On the night and early hours of the morning that Sasha was murdered, Ben was at a friend's house and so he had an alibi. He also let police take a DNA sample and he was not a match to the DNA found on Sasha's body, so he was also ruled out from having any involvement in Sasha's murder. So police continued to do some investigating and they decided to contact staff from the apartment complex. They asked staff there if it was in the security guard's job description to take out the trash. They were told that it wasn't, and this was clearly alarming. An upstairs neighbor also spoke to police and said that he was doing laundry when he saw Sasha in the hall, and he said that it looked like the security guard was following her. So now there's just a few things that aren't adding up in relation to this security guard. Originally, he told police he finished his shift at 6 a.m, but he was still in the building 36 minutes later, which was seen on the CCTV footage. And now police are being told it's not his job to take out the trash. And then putting two and two together, Sasha's apartment smelled of cleaning products. If you remember, he also walked out the door with the garbage bags and then came back in without them. Turns out his car was actually parked on the second floor, which is where he went out with the garbage bags and then came back in without them. So you can assume he might have put the bags in his car. And then just to add another layer, the bags that he was carrying were white with red handles, and the bags found in Sasha's apartment were white with red handles. We know that Sasha was still alive at 5:12 a.m. as this was when she sent her final text to Ben, so she was murdered sometime after 5:12 a.m. Just over an hour later is when the security guard disposed of the garbage bags. This was all very concerning, and so now police wanted to pull the security guard in for further questioning. So who even was this security guard? The security guard who was working at the apartment complex that night was Stephen Duxbury. At the time, he was employed by Vita Security and Investigations, and to work for them, he had to pass a state-level FBI background check. He had been working at Sasha's apartment complex for a few months. He had previously graduated from university and was a United States Air Force veteran. At the time, it was reported that Stephen was also married. Stephen was 33 years old when he came across Sasha that night at the apartment complex in 2018. Investigators were growing more and more suspicious of Stephen and even noticed scratches and bite marks on his body. They decided that it was time to bring Stephen in for a polygraph test. When he was asked if he ever entered Sasha's apartment, the needle jumped, indicating deception. He was also then asked if Sasha was stabbed, and he said no, and the needle didn't appear to jump on this answer. Then he was asked if Sasha was choked, and the needle jumped, which was extremely incriminating at the time as it wasn't public information yet exactly how Sasha had died, so there was no way that he would have known that she was strangled unless he was involved. And do you remember how I told you earlier that the toilet seat was left up? Well, investigators were able to find fingerprints on the toilet seat. Turns out Stephen previously had to supply his fingerprints to work as a security guard. And the fingerprints on the toilet seat were a match to Stephen's fingerprint data. The sole of a pair of Stephen's shoes also appeared to match the footprint that was found in Sasha's apartment. On October 23rd, investigators obtained a search warrant for Stephen's home and phone. When technicians searched Stephen's phone to look through his phone history, they found that he had searched how to override a quickset lock, and the lock on Sasha's door was a quickset lock. And it turns out that he searched this at around 5 a.m. on the morning of Sasha's murder. There was also a 90-minute window that morning where police couldn't find any CCTV footage of him in the building, and they also couldn't find any records of him swiping through doors. It is now pretty obvious to police that they have Sasha's murderer. He had gone from protector to predator in less than 2 weeks. So police went ahead and arrested Stephen Duxbury on October 30th, 2015. He was charged with first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, and burglary. It came to light that in 2015, the same year that Sasha was murdered, a female resident had actually reported that Stephen was acting really sketchy and had followed her back to her apartment. And apparently there had actually been numerous complaints about Stephen from people living in the apartment complex. Stephen appeared in court later in November 2017. The trial lasted for about a week, and Stephen was ultimately found guilty of all charges. On November 21st, 2017, Stephen was sentenced to 2 life sentences. Stephen will not have the possibility of parole. Sasha's parents are obviously devastated. Sasha's mum stated she will never have a Last Supper with my daughter again. Her father will never walk her down the aisle. Every wedding I attend, I know we will never have that with our daughter. Sasha's dad said that after Sasha's murder, he was numb. It took 18 months for him to feel any emotion again, and when he did, he just cried and cried. Sasha's father has said that Sasha will continue to live on through memories. This whole case is just so heartbreaking. Sasha was such a beautiful person who was dedicated to her job, and when she wasn't working, she just enjoyed going out with her friends and living life to the fullest. She got home safely in the early hours of that morning just to be murdered in her own apartment complex, which she thought was really safe. And that is all the information I have for you guys today on this case. I look forward to discussing it with you guys down in the comments, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye guys.